If you can't follow this first law, the rest don't matter. There's a breaking point most people never talk about. It's not when your world collapses. It's not when someone walks away. It's not even when you fail publicly. The real breaking point? It's when you realize you've been living your whole life reacting to things you don't control. You check the messages, you monitor their tone, you try to predict outcomes that were never yours to influence in the first place. And then you wonder why your mind feels tired, even before the day starts. Let me ask you something raw. How much of your stress comes from things you can't actually change? That's where this begins. If you want to be mentally unbreakable, forget motivation, forget hype, forget the morning routine influencers sell to you. You need laws, mental ones, philosophical ones. The kind that don't bend just because your feelings do. The Stoics lived by these, not because they were ancient, wise, or perfect, but because they were human, and they knew the mind was the first battlefield. And every day you wake up without these laws, you walk into that war unarmed. So what are these laws? Law 1. Control what you can, accept what you can't. Let that hit, not as a quote, but as a command, because right now, your energy is bleeding into everything except what's actually under your influence. You're trying to control people's opinions. You're carrying guilt from things that already happened. You're mentally negotiating with futures that don't even exist. And every time you do, you become breakable. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." The moment you forget that, your mind becomes a sponge for suffering. But the Stoic doesn't sponge. He filters. He looks life in the face and says, "This is mine to carry." That is not. Let's go deeper. You think you're anxious because life is hard, but that's not the truth. You're anxious because your mind keeps trying to solve things it was never built to control. You're playing chess with ghosts, trying to move pieces that aren't on your board. And the more you try to fix the unfixable, the more powerless you feel. That's the trap. The Stoics weren't emotionless. They didn't sit in caves meditating all day. They were emperors, exiles, warriors, philosophers. They were in the mess, just like you. But here's what made them different. They knew where their power ended, and they respected that boundary like a sacred wall. Let me ask you something. How would your day change if you stopped arguing with what's already happened? What would you reclaim if you stopped checking that one message thread, hoping the tone might change? What if, instead of chasing clarity where none exists, you poured that energy into the one thing you do control, your next response? That's the shift. That's law number 1 in action. And listen closely. This isn't about passivity. It's not about letting life happen. It's about knowing when to act and when to release, when to fight, and when to stand still with intention. Think of it like a fire. If you try to stop it by flailing, you feed it. But if you build a containment line, it dies on its own. Your mind works the same way. Trying to control everything makes the fire bigger. Knowing where to draw the line? That's what makes you fireproof. Here's something brutal. Some of the most powerful people on the planet are mentally fragile because they haven't mastered this law. They're successful, but they're always angry, always anxious, always reacting. They can't sleep, they can't be alone because their mind is a battlefield and they never learned how to filter the noise. You want to be different? Then start where they didn't. Write this down and memorize it. If it's outside your control, it's outside your concern. Every time you hand over your peace to what you can't control, you give your strings to the world. Cut them. Choose your stance. Because here's the truth. You will suffer. You will lose things. You will be misunderstood. But if you learn to focus only on what's yours to carry, you'll suffer cleanly, without chaos, without collapse. And that's how unbreakable minds are built. Law 2. You are not your emotions. Your feelings are real, but they are not rulers. There's a moment you've probably never told anyone about. It's not dramatic. You didn't break anything. You didn't scream. You just sat there feeling everything all at once and not knowing what to do with any of it. That's the kind of moment that breaks people, not because the world did something, but because no one ever told them this. You are not your emotions, and you don't have to obey them. People talk about self-awareness, but no one teaches emotional separation. No one teaches you that you can feel anxiety and not become anxious. You can feel anger and not explode. You can feel sadness and not sink. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. They didn't try to shut their emotions off. They just refuse to let emotions drive the ship. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But here's the twist most people miss. Your emotions aren't the enemy. Your reaction to them is. The feeling is just a signal. It's data, not identity. But the second you believe your feelings are you, you become reactive, unstable, pulled around by every mood swing like a leaf in the wind. And you can't be unbreakable when you're owned by your own weather. Your emotions are weather. They come fast, they change shape, they pass. But here's the mistake most people make. They build their identity inside a thunderstorm. They feel overwhelmed, so they become an overwhelmed person. They feel insecure, so they speak from insecurity. They feel anger. And now, they're the kind of person who explodes. But the Stoic, he does something radically different. He steps back. He observes. He says, anger is here. Let it pass. Fear has arrived. It's not me, just something visiting. That's the key. Your emotions are visitors, not residents. Imagine this. You're sitting in a room. Thoughts walk in. Some are loud. Some bring pain. Some demand attention. But here's the trick. You don't have to hand them the remote. The Stoic mind knows how to sit with discomfort without trying to silence it or submit to it. It just watches, it breathes, it waits. Because even the sharpest storm can't break a mountain. And you? You can be that mountain, not by denying your feelings, but by mastering your response to them. That's where strength begins. Let me give you a line you should never forget. Feeling is not failing, but following blindly is. You will feel rage, you will feel doubt, you will feel despair, but what makes you unbreakable is the ability to say, "This feeling is real, but it is not my master." Law 3. Hard things are for practice, not avoidance. You're not failing. You're skipping the reps. There's a lie we've all been sold. If it feels hard, it's wrong. If it hurts, stop. If it's uncomfortable, avoid it. You don't say it out loud, but you live by it. That's why every time the cold hits, you run toward warmth. Every time it gets quiet, you pick up your phone. Every time discomfort knocks, you open the door for distraction. But here's the thing. Discomfort isn't danger. It's a signal, a teacher, a mirror. And if you run from it, you run from your own evolution. The Stoics trained differently. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Not some difficulties, not the curated, planned, gentle ones. All of them. The inconvenience, the cold shower, the awkward silence, the rejection email, the delay, the detour, the heartbreak. Each one is an opportunity, not for punishment, but for practice. That's the shift most people never make. They see hard things as threats. The Stoic sees them as reps. Every time life gets uncomfortable, most people flinch. But every time you flinch, you skip a rep, you miss a chance to train, to get stronger, to harden your mind. And here's the quiet cost. If you keep avoiding hard things, one day, even simple things will feel unbearable. Picture this. Two people walk into a gym. One avoids the heavy weights and doesn't want to struggle. The other picks up the bar, fails, tries again, breathes through it. 6 months later, who's stronger? Obvious, right? So why don't we apply the same logic to our minds? You avoid tension, confrontation, failure, boredom, and call it peace. But it's not peace, it's mental atrophy. You don't grow by avoiding the emotional weight. You grow by getting under it and learning how to carry it. The Stoics knew this. They practiced discomfort on purpose, fasting, cold, isolation, silence, voluntary hardship. Not because they liked suffering, but because they refused to be owned by comfort. They were building something most people never will. A mind that doesn't collapse when life stops being easy. Here's the truth. Hard things don't weaken you. Your response to them does. Pain isn't the problem. Your unwillingness to listen to it is. Because pain is a signal. It says, here's where your weakness lives. Now fix it. So let me ask you, when was the last time you did something uncomfortable on purpose? Not for the result, not for the content, just to sharpen your mind? Most people avoid discomfort until life forces it on them. The Stoic trains with it daily, so when life does strike, he's already forged. Law 4. You are what you tolerate in yourself. Your standards aren't what you post, They're what you permit in private. Nobody wakes up and says, "I'm going to sabotage my future today," but that's exactly what happens, slowly, quietly, privately, and not through some dramatic failure, not through obvious mistakes, but through tiny decisions you tell yourself don't matter, snoozing one more time, skipping the journaling, scrolling when you said you'd read, saying "I'll do it later" to the one thing that would move your life forward. These don't feel like character flaws. They feel like moments, but moments repeated are habits, and habits shape identity. Here's what the Stoics understood. You are not your goals. You are your lowest standard. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter." He wasn't talking about big moral choices. He was talking about the micro moments where you choose. Do I show up with discipline? Or do I cut the corner again? That's the thing no one tells you. Your mind remembers everything you tolerate, even when no one sees it. Even when it doesn't feel like a big deal, every compromise, even small ones, whispers, "This is who I am now." And over time, your self-image follows suit, not because you're lazy, but because your standards quietly drifted into softness. Look around. Most people aren't drowning in chaos. They're slowly decaying in comfort, not because life hit them too hard, but because they stopped checking themselves when it was still easy to fix. That's what makes this law so dangerous. It doesn't feel like a law. It feels like a suggestion, like something you'll clean up later, but by the time you feel the damage, it's already deep. You don't need a complete collapse to lose your edge. All it takes is a few excuses, a few tomorrows, a few too many times you forgave what you should have confronted, and before you know it, your standards are no longer yours. They've been quietly negotiated away, one soft compromise at a time. The Stoics didn't just think about death and hardship. They tracked their character like a soldier checks his weapon. Marcus Aurelius didn't end his days with "Did I succeed?" He asked, "Did I do what was right? Did I do it without complaint? Did I leave anything on the table?" That's self-respect. Not the kind you post, the kind you feel when no one's watching and you still act with integrity. So here's the challenge. Where have you gone soft on yourself? Not publicly, privately. Where are you tolerating something that, deep down, you know is dimming your potential? Call it out, confront it, close the door, not because someone else will hold you accountable, but because this is what unbreakable minds do. Law 5. Your thoughts shape your suffering. It's not the event, it's the meaning you attach to it. Here's something brutal. Most of your suffering is manufactured in your own head, not because your life is perfect, not because pain isn't real, but because your interpretation of pain adds layers the original event never carried. You don't just feel disappointment, you tell yourself it means you're not good enough. You don't just lose something, you decide you'll never get it back. You don't just make a mistake, you attach the identity of failure to it. And the more you repeat that story, the heavier it gets, until it's not the pain that's crushing you. It's the narrative. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Listen to that again. This isn't motivational fluff, it's an exposed nerve. Because if you track your internal dialogue, the voice in your head when things go wrong, you'll find it's not the event breaking you. It's what you believe the event says about you. The Stoics understood something psychology would prove centuries later. Your thoughts don't just reflect reality. They construct it, and that means your pain isn't just felt, it's built. Let's be clear, real pain exists. Grief, rejection, betrayal, failure, loss. You don't avoid those, even as a Stoic. But here's the question the modern mind avoids. How much of your pain are you rehearsing? How much are you decorating, dramatizing, and replaying? Because that's what turns a clean wound into a festering one. It's not just the moment that hurts. It's the mental theater you run afterwards. The Stoic? He still feels the cut, but he doesn't write a tragedy around it. He acknowledges the pain. He learns from it. Then he shuts the door. Not because he's cold, but because he refuses to carry what doesn't serve him. Marcus Aurelius had a ritual. Whenever something disturbed his mind, he would mentally reduce it to its simplest form. Is this thing in my control? Is it harming my character? Will it matter tomorrow, a month, a year from now? If the answer was no, he let it go. That's not numbness, that's precision. And if you want to be mentally unbreakable, You need that same habit because your thoughts can either end the pain or stretch it for years. One is clean, the other is chaos. You decide which one you live in. Law 6. Everything you fear is survivable. Your fear is a compass, not a command. Fear doesn't always show up loud. Sometimes it looks like hesitation. Sometimes it sounds like, I'll do it later. Sometimes it hides in logic, disguised as this isn't the right time. But beneath all of that, fear, and not fear of death, not fear of danger, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort, fear of doing something and failing in public. But here's what most people never realize. Most of what you fear won't destroy you. It will introduce you to yourself. That thing you've been avoiding, the email, the conversation, the leap, the change, it's not going to kill you. It's going to reveal you. The Stoics had no interest in staying comfortable. They wanted reality unfiltered, and they believed that running from fear was delaying growth. Seneca said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." You felt that? He's saying, fear is often just suffering before anything bad has even happened, and that's the trap. Fear doesn't mean stop. It means pay attention here. That edge you keep avoiding, that thing you've been putting off, second-guessing, dancing around, that's your resistance. And resistance is not a reason to quit. It's a marker. It shows you exactly where your growth begins. The Stoics didn't wait for fear to pass. They invited it in. They studied it. They asked, what's behind this fear? What weakness is it trying to protect? What potential is it trying to keep hidden? Because fear doesn't show up when you're broken. It shows up when you're close to becoming someone new. You've been taught to run from what scares you. The Stoic trains with it. Voluntary hardship, public speaking, silence, saying no, taking ownership, not to impress anyone, but to prove one thing. I can survive the thing I once thought would break me. And when you do that, even once, fear loses its power because you no longer believe its promises. You don't negotiate with it. You don't obey it. You just keep moving with it. Here's the truth. Fear is real, but so is your ability to face it, to endure it, to walk out on the other side, scarred but stronger. And the more you do that, the quieter fear becomes. Law 7. Silence is your training ground. Most people fear silence because that's where the truth lives. There's a reason you reach for your phone the second you wake up, a reason the playlist is always running. The videos, the tabs, the scroll, it's not boredom, it's avoidance. You're not trying to stay entertained, you're trying to stay distracted because silence exposes everything. And if you've been running from your own thoughts, silence will feel like a confrontation. That's why this law matters. Because you will never become mentally unbreakable if you can't sit alone in a room without flinching. The Stoics didn't just tolerate silence, they trained in it. Every journal entry, every morning meditation, every walk without distraction, that wasn't for peace, it was for clarity. Because noise hides the truth, but silence tells it exactly as it is. Look at the modern mind. Always scrolling, always playing something, always searching for input. But why? Because silence is confrontation. When there's nothing left to distract you, you hear the questions you've been avoiding. Am I who I said I'd be? Why do I keep betraying myself? What would I do if I stopped hiding? Most people can't sit with those questions, so they run into noise, stimulation, shallow relief. But the Stoic sits, he listens, he doesn't flinch at discomfort, he leans into it, because silence doesn't break him. It builds him. Here's what silence gives you. Clarity, focus, a reconnection to your inner standard, not the world's noise. When everything around you is shouting, the ability to be still isn't just peaceful, it's dangerous. It makes you immune to the chaos. Seneca wrote, "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." If you can do that, not once, but as a practice, you'll stop needing motivation. You'll stop chasing noise. You'll stop hiding behind movement. You'll act from intention, not impulse. Stillness, not scarcity. That's power. Identity is a choice made daily. You are not a fixed product. You are a pattern in motion. Most people treat identity like a tattoo, something chosen once, etched in place, unchangeable unless it hurts to remove. But here's the truth you were never taught. You are not who you are. You are who you repeatedly choose to be. That version of you keep defaulting to? That's not you. That's just the most practiced version, the one built from repetition, not reflection. So let's say it clearly. If you're undisciplined, it's because you've rehearsed that identity. If you self-sabotage, it's because you've recycled the same story. If you feel stuck, it's because you've been choosing the same pattern on autopilot. And if that's true, then you can choose something different today, now, in this moment. The Stoics weren't perfect men, but they practiced this law daily. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his journal for show. He wrote it to anchor his identity. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. It's not about theory. It's about action over argument. There's something no one tells you. You won't feel like the new version of yourself the first time you act like him. You'll feel like an imposter. You'll feel fake. You'll feel resistance. But that doesn't mean you're lying. It means you're leaving someone behind. And that's the secret of unbreakable people. They don't wait until they believe. They don't wait until they're ready. They choose and then become. Every disciplined person you admire, they were once undisciplined, but they kept choosing differently. Every resilient person, they were once broken, but they refused to keep living like it. Identity isn't lightning. It's a decision repeated until it's undeniable. So here's your invitation. Let go of who you've rehearsed. Choose who you become and back it up with action. Not someday, but now. Not because you feel inspired, not because this video made you feel something, but because deep down, you're done living small. You're done tolerating a version of yourself that's easy to maintain but hard to respect. Be tolerant with others, strict with yourself. That's your path forward. Choose with precision, act with power, and show up like your future depends on it, because it does. Final recap. 1. Control what you can, let go of the rest. 2. Feel, but never obey emotion blindly. 3. Seek discomfort. It's the forge. 4. Raise your standard. What you tolerate becomes who you are. 5. Don't build stories around pain. Just feel it, then move. 6. Step into fear. Survival creates transformation. 7. Train in silence. That's where your real voice lives. 8. Decide who you are every single day. If this stirred something in you, don't scroll away, sit with it. Replay the law that stung the most. Then ask yourself one question. What identity will I reinforce today with my next decision? That's how it begins. Reset, rebuild, repeat. Like this video and subscribe for more.